Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
And listeners, welcome back to the Farm for Profit Podcast. You got Tanner, Corey, and Dave all sitting in a steaming hot studio today.
It's a lot better in here than it is outside. I will tell you that.
Yes, we're excited for this conversation because I don't know a ton about this topic. I know a little bit to be dangerous. Corey, you've dabbled in a little bit of crypto.
In that 2016 run-up of when it came on everybody else's map.
Yeah. Dave, have you done anything in crypto?
I have learned about it. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos on it. I've watched some of the trading sites and how you can trade it, but I've never pulled the trigger to actually do any of it.
I know we've got some listeners that are way more well-versed in this topic than we are, but we've probably got some that are excited to learn right alongside us as well. So I think it's about time to jump into our episode for today. However, I do want to tell everybody thank you for hitting subscribe. Thank you for hitting subscribe, for following us. Make sure you go over to YouTube to be able to see us because I've got a shirt on today.
What color is this shirt?
I know what color it is. I don't know why you struggle so
You're
much.
You're going to have two options. Blue,
my
light
pants,
blue,
my pants are blue,
or gray.
That's three. You just said two options.
Light blue or gray. Because I will give it to you. You called it light blue.
You did.
I did. It's not
Dave,
white.
is that light blue?
It is not white.
Maybe at one time, but at best it's like stonewashed.
Yes.
Like to white from a blue color of some point.
This is enough.
Did you have this in high school?
I'm moving on. I am moving on. We need to welcome our guest.
And so we're talking crypto.
Yeah, blockchain, crypto.
That's what I was going to say. Are we talking blockchain or are we talking crypto?
I think we're going to get into a lot of it.
Because farming, I could see blockchain a whole lot more.
Yep.
Crypto, maybe not.
Seeing the smile on our guest, I think we're probably using elementary terms compared to where we are about to head. We want to welcome JP Barrick, not only a prominent figure in the world of blockchain and cryptocurrency, but he's also the brilliant mind behind the miningstore.com. Excited to learn about that. Over the years, his passion has evolved into a mission to democratize the process of cryptocurrency mining, making it accessible to enthusiasts, Corey, other investors, and other businesses of all sizes. Welcome to the podcast, JP.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be with some Iowa natives today and chat some Bitcoin mining.
Yes. So
JP came to us through
the squad guys.
The squad, yeah.
Yeah, the two brothers. Why can I not think of their names?
Grant and Spencer.
Yes.
Because we always blank when we're thinking of names. But no, thanks for coming on. I mean, let's not get into crypto right away. Let's get a little background about yourself.
So I got into Bitcoin mining in 2016. I got in my first Bitcoin in 2013. And I ended up in Iowa mining Bitcoin in right around 2019, where I met someone in Grundy Center, and they said, hey, I think we can find you some cheap energy. And Bitcoin mining, the number one cost to running a Bitcoin mine is going to be electricity. So with the abundant wind and solar that Iowa has, we ended up in Grundy Center, Iowa, with our first facility built out there. And since then, scaled up to a few other counties in the area and have 5 facilities either in development or in operation right now, and are looking to build a few more 100 megawatts of Bitcoin mining in the state of Iowa, specifically because of the cheap cost of energy and also the tax credits that are available to data centers in that area.
Okay. That's good. But who is JP? I do want to get to that stuff. JP. But what I caught there is you're not from Iowa, maybe?
I'm not from Iowa. I grew up in North Carolina. I was a dropout, went to NC State, was doing computer science, and then started this business as a hobby, as a way to make some money on the side. Then ended up dropping out of school to do it full time, and it took me all across the United States. But I love creating financial products that enable people to get access to Bitcoin. I love the benefits that Bitcoin brings to communities, and overall, I'm just excited about the technology and the energy space and how it can benefit and create financial disruption.
So you were kind of in the tech space anyway for school.
Yeah, was going to school for comp sci. Was an intern for a boss named Josh Anderson. He said, "Hey, you shouldn't go to college. You should just work on your own business." And it's like, "Nah, I want to go party a little bit. I want to check it out. See what the whole college thing's about." Lasted for about a year, and then was off to the races and doing this business.
So I don't see a ring. Are you married, kids, girlfriends, significant others, anybody?
I'm 26 years old. I'm not married, no kids yet. Just a single man living in Austin, Texas.
Oh, so that's where you're at now. You're living in Texas.
I live in Texas. Yeah, I've been here for about 4 years. So the facilities, we have a director of management up there of operations. We have multiple technicians, and I run a lot of the site ops when it comes to new site development and fundraising here from Austin.
So I heard like everybody from California is moving to Austin. Is that true? Like the whole half the state, if you're Republican, you're probably moving that direction?
A lot of people do move to Austin. It's an amazing big city with comedy, and music. But Californians, Midwesterns, I've seen some people from Iowa move down here as well. New York, it's just a good state. But we've had 40 degrees of over 40 days of 100+ degree weather. So imagine that. Like I know it's hot right there today, but that's kind of a pain in the ass to deal with. So I wouldn't recommend living here during the summer.
That's a good point, because what are we? We're 4 days into it?
Yeah. I mean, this is the first day it's hit 100.
Right.
But the heat indexes is like 120 with the humidity. Like
It's the humidity.
It's hard to breathe outside.
It was hot a couple days ago at the State Fair walking around.
Imagine how hot it is at the Bitcoin mines.
Ooh. Yeah.
So you created this entire company. What's your company?
It's called Mining Store, miningstore.com.
Okay.
And we help people get into Bitcoin mining from a scale of $100 all the way up to $20 million. So
Whoa.
the intention is that wherever your check size is, if you're looking to get exposure to Bitcoin and acquire Bitcoin at a discount by using energy, then you want to get into mining, and we help you do that. We have a few different products, and the $100 is something called our BitVault product, where we work with influencers to do regulated crowdfunding. So have you guys heard of regulated crowdfunding before?
I've heard of crowdfunding.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, crowdfunding. So it's the same thing. It's just, the Reg CF process, and people, influencers, communities can raise up to $5 million to go ahead and invest in any asset they want. So we make it super easy for influencers to go to their fans, go to their communities, and have them invest at $100. And then most of our customers probably sit in the $100,000 to $300,000, $400,000 size of investment. And that's a second bucket of clients that do something called managed mining, where we work with the Bitcoin miners. We buy the machines for them. We run it for them. We provide them just a cash payout or a Bitcoin payout at the end of every month. And then we have our larger clients, family offices, hedge funds that want to own one of these facilities and build it out for themselves. And we go ahead and help them do that in Iowa at some of these local substations across the state.
You hear that, Dave? You could fundraise and get your own mine. You could use your influencer status and get yourself a Bitcoin mine.
He said $100 is the minimum, Tanner.
Right.
I don't think I can
Dave's out.
I
Dave's
don't
out.
know if I could fundraise $20.
We've said a lot of terms, and I think a lot of people have heard these terms over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. But let's start at the base level. I mean, you're talking about mining cryptocurrency. What does that even mean? What is cryptocurrency?
Mm-hmm.
So Bitcoin is one of the mineable cryptocurrencies out there. There's only a few that are above $1 billion that can actually be mined. Bitcoin is by far the largest and what we would consider the gold of cryptocurrencies. It was the first cryptocurrency, and it was the first blockchain, which we've mentioned in the introduction. And a blockchain is simply a way to decentralize or disseminate trust across a bunch of people. So instead of trusting one authority or one bank or one government, you can trust the Bitcoin blockchain or just the blockchain itself for the source of truth. And so why is it important to have a source of truth? Well, when you're using money to pay people want to make sure that the money they're getting is authentic. It's real. It's not going to be duplicated, and you're not going to have it in a few hours. So Bitcoin kind of solves this problem across the internet, which allows us to use not have to use someone like PayPal or Visa to settle transactions and have this third party or this intermediary. We can instead use Bitcoin to settle those transactions. So that's the core concept of what Bitcoin is. And then when it comes to mining, the only way to get Bitcoin is to get it from a computer and to extract it from a computer. And so it doesn't mean you're going to go to the store at Best Buy and pick up a computer that might have a Bitcoin on it. No, the computer has to do the math problems or run something called a hash function. And it's basically looking for new Bitcoins. It's using energy, it's computing, it's doing these processes and calculations, always looking for new Bitcoin. And so we run thousands of these servers or of these computers in Iowa at our data centers. Each one holds about 2,000 servers and staffed by about 3 people full time. And those individuals keep the servers running. They replace a fan if it goes down. They replace a power supply. If you have a computer, they maintain the area and the equipment. They make sure that there's no snow getting in there. And then they also make sure the facility turns off when the power is too expensive, because energy provides this unique opportunity where the energy prices are constantly fluctuating. Energy at 4 o'clock in the afternoon is going to be more expensive than energy at 9 a.m. So we have these great opportunities, which we can get into more about, playing the energy market as a Bitcoin miner, but also getting paid in newly mined Bitcoin. And as I mentioned, the only way to get Bitcoin is to buy it from someone else who has it or to mine it.
Wow. That was a lot. So essentially the Bitcoin is like a wage for the computer doing calculations. Is that a very elementary way of saying that?
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it. So each Bitcoin server generates cash flow. Another way to look at it is maybe like rental properties in an apartment complex. Each one's a unit. Each one's generating you cash flow every day, every week, every month. And we're able to capture that cash flow in Bitcoin, and you can sell the Bitcoin on the open market whenever you want for cash, and you put it in your bank account the same day.
I think the hardest part for any listener to grasp, and if you haven't been in Bitcoin or researched or even watched any videos on how blockchain works, is you're talking, JP, about mining this as a computer program. That there's only so many out there, and we're using computers to try to find this formula to make this mythical coin that is out there, and then somebody buys it. I just find that hard for that is probably the hardest thing that I think anybody to grasp. What's your experience of when you're trying to explain this to somebody that is not educated on it at all? How do you dumb it down to the lowest level?
You dumb it down to the lowest level, I would say, by focusing on what the basics of Bitcoin. The fact that there's 21 million of them, there's never going to be any more. There's never going to be any less. And it's going to take 100 plus years to mine these Bitcoin over the next 21 million Bitcoin over the next 100 years to mine it all. You say that you can't physically touch a Bitcoin because it's all on the blockchain, which is a ledger. Now, we can explain the ledger status a little bit farther and remind people of, back in the day we had a king, and the king would look at the ledger and he would have a list of things that people owed him money and who he owed money to, but it was just one ledger. And he was in control of that. So he's that source of truth that we're talking about. He's that power at B. Then we moved to double ledger accounting, which is what we use today, where we have our accounts receivables and our accounts payables. I would say most people understand that concept.
Yeah.
But what most people don't like doing is the reconciliation. Did this person pay me? Did I pay that person? And having to deal with all that. So Bitcoin solves that problem by introducing the blockchain, which is another way to say a triple ledger accounting system. So what's the triple ledger? That third ledger is going to be the blockchain. And every 10 minutes, we stack another block of transactions. So any Bitcoin that moved between parties on top of this blockchain. So you can imagine blocks on blocks on blocks, where every 10 minutes, anyone who does a transaction in those 10 minutes, they're going to be included in the next block. And we verify it. We say, yes, these Bitcoins are valid. Yes, they came from an address that someone had them in. It's not a false Bitcoin that was created out of thin air. It's unique, and we can prove that cryptographically. And so then you don't have any reconciliation, because the reconciliation happens every 10 minutes. So there's no need to go back in time and try to reconcile it, which then allows you to send payments across the internet without having to trust any third parties. It allows you to confirm those payments instantly, and allows you to just move value easier. So effectively, Bitcoin is a system to decentralize trust or move value across the internet much faster and much cheaper than any other system in the world.
This is where we're going to get into how does it affect farming. because I've thought of this, and you did a fantastic job. I've never heard. First of all, I didn't know there's only 21 million. So that's new to me. I didn't know it's going to take 100 years. Next question is, how long have we been doing it out of that 100? And then triple ledger. So we all get the checks and balance with that. The triple ledger is basically that it's one open source where everybody has a picture of the book, so we can cross-reference it 3 times. Mm-hmm. Imagine, since I sell real estate, I have to go and make sure that Corey did own that property and that he inherited it from his dad. And there is a chain of title that went with this real estate that he had, this farmland.
Yeah, to make sure I don't have a mortgage on it.
Correct, to make sure you don't have a mortgage. If we had blockchain, so aside from crypto, if we had blockchain that was for legal rights to land, that's one way that we could use it. Even pickup trucks, we have a title. We have to go get to the DMV. We have to sign off on the title. Eventually, we may get into where blockchain or triple ledger, I like that term actually better, yep. that it goes out there that we don't have to go to the DMV to make sure that you own this vehicle. I know you own this vehicle because it was out there and now I can buy it from you.
Transaction complete, officially done.
So he said it best, transfer of value. So think of anything in farming that has value.
Yeah,
it could be work, it could be hours, it could be equipment, grain bins, corn, beans, livestock, anything that has value. I love the fact that you use that word, JP. It's not money, it's value.
So I can give you an example. Our friend Adam Kleiss, moved for ISU, told me back in 2016 when we were doing this, they were pretty big into dairy genetics, and they were trading genetics. I don't know if they were shipping cows or embryos or what they were doing, but it was $1 million in value that basically someone in Saudi Arabia had to send back here for the product they were providing. Tanner, how does that work in a typical banking system? If you need to get $1 million from an offshore bank account back here, it has to go to several different countries.
You'd have to find a central bank.
Like Switzerland, and then it goes into Canada, and then it comes into the United States or something. Right. How did he describe me? And every stop, one of those banks takes a portion.
Takes a little piece. Yep.
And it takes days.
Yep. And especially if it's coming from a country that is on an alert list or on an extra level of security or scrutiny.
So he told me they were going to be $25,000 to $30,000 in fees by the time they got that $1 million of value, where he could just get it in Bitcoin, turn it into fiat or cash right away, skip all those, and save a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. But what if you lose your password?
That's bad.
Does that sound right, JP?
That sounds exactly right. And one of the things I was going to say is that there's now people are building dollars on top of blockchains, mainly Ethereum and Tron and Binance blockchains, so not necessarily Bitcoin, even though they're getting there. But those they're called stable coins. Those stable coins are $1 backed, and the amount of transactions that settled on stable coins last year was over $10 trillion. That's almost as much as Visa. PayPal settled $1 trillion. That's 1% of every Fed wire sent is settled on these chains. So blockchain and Bitcoin, yes, you hear the hype about the price. Yes, you hear the hype every 3 or 4 years, and we'll get into that. But there's real value across the world being settled on these chains, on these stable coins that are dollar to dollar value, and they're being settled in countries that don't have the banking infrastructure built out in Africa, for example, in the continent of Africa, or across, it's cheaper for us to pay vendors in China for new equipment for mining parts with these stable coins than to send a bank transfer because it's instant. The fees are $3, $2, and it's not $45 like a wire.
Okay, hold up.
There's a ton.
You said fees. So somebody is getting paid to transfer this, just like a bank, but yet there's no bank involved. Who gets the $3?
The people making sure that the transaction's trustworthy. So in the Bitcoin blockchain, that's us, the Bitcoin miners, right? We're the ones deciding which transaction is going to go next in order, and is it trustworthy, and does it come from someone that actually owns those Bitcoin? We take that fee. In the Ethereum world, it's something called a node or a validator, which validates the transaction and says, yep, this is valid. We're going to stack this transaction, and they get that fee.
Yeah, so that it doesn't have to be one company. Like you said, it's all miners in reference of the Bitcoin side. But notably, there is still a transaction fee. It's just significantly less, to what it sounds like, than a wire transfer.
And it's instant, and it doesn't have to go through several transfer fees.
But what if they up their fee? I've had companies that I bought in at $3 and now it's $400.
Yeah.
So what if
Great question.
everybody?
So the fees are dynamic. So the fees, because we're selling block space, which is this arbitrary virtual thing, the miner is always incentivized to choose the transaction that's willing to pay the highest fee per megabit or per dollar value moved across the chain.
It's an auction.
So when a bunch of people are trying to use it, it's an auction every 10 minutes. And so we're going to grab always a transaction. And if a bunch of people are trying to use it at the same time, we're going to take the ones that are paying more fees. But if you don't have a timely transaction, you pay a little bit less fee. It'll get picked up within the same day, same hour, just not instantly.
It's like when you select delivery from Amazon.
So now every person in the world, I'll give my auction soapbox here, says
Dave's
that it's divorce, dissolution,
Look right into the
disagreement,
camera as you're doing
like
this.
everything, right? Okay, so everybody has the bad words for auction. The largest amount of transactions, think of every Google ad in the world, auction. Cryptocurrency, auction. $280 billion industry without even including this.
Yeah.
So now you need to lump that in.
I know.
That's right.
I think we went over one thing when Dave said we have 100 years to do this. Am I right in saying this, JP, that each calculation gets harder after every mine to Bitcoin or every formula?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So yes, in the sense that every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that comes out that every 10 minutes is cut in half. So right now we're at 6.25 Bitcoin, and it's been going on for about 10, 11 years now, Bitcoin. And then it's going to cut down to 3.125 Bitcoin in May or April of 2024. And that's what kind of kicks off these price events is every 4 years, if you look back on the Bitcoin price chart, you'll see a massive spike because our Bitcoin that we're getting from mining, we're using the same electricity that we were using the next day. Tuesday to Wednesday doesn't change, but we're getting paid half of the amount of Bitcoin and effectively half of the amount of cash. So in order the market doesn't have to absorb that new Bitcoin anymore. So right now, let's say that $80 million of new Bitcoin comes on the market every day. That gets cut to 40 million on that Wednesday. And then the market can start buying new coins that are no longer going to be being sold into the market, but then new coins that are on the order book, which causes this massive price increase and a massive run-up, which we saw in 2013, 2017, 2021, and 2025 potentially.
So what happens when, let's say eight years from now, I think we hit quantum computing? Are we going to be able to get the Bitcoin? Are we going to go reverse? So instead of half, now we get 4 times as much?
Nope, because it's in the code that you only can get so much. So as more people join, the code recalculates. So every 2 weeks, it gets harder. That math problem or that hash function we're solving becomes harder every time someone puts one Bitcoin miner in the ground. So if we build a facility and we plug in 2,000 more machines, the network's going to adjust 0.0001% harder. So people all across the world are plugging in new machines all the time, and it's called the Bitcoin difficulty. It's basically how hard it is to mine new Bitcoins so we can ensure the issuance schedule or the amount of new Bitcoin coming out every 10 minutes remains the same. So if we're putting more servers on the ground and it goes faster than 10 minutes, only 9 minutes to do a new block, then it says, whoa, we're going too fast. We got to make the math problem harder. And that's in the software, and anyone can read that, and that's very clear. And it's been working, for 11 years just that way.
Who wrote the code? Who started this?
So the individual who started this, his name or her name is Satoshi Nakamoto. It's a pseudo name, so it's not a real person that goes by, it's a John Smith, effectively. And no one really knows who he or her is. They were active online for the first 3 to 4 years of it coming out, and they kind of went dark. They've no longer post things, no longer talk about it publicly on the forums. So Bitcoin is truly decentralized, where no one can turn it off, and no government can shut it down and point at a company and say, "Hey, we don't like what you're doing," which is why it succeeded for so long, and why it will continue to succeed. Is because there's not one person who can be like, this isn't going to work, or the government can't say, hey, you can't send money to these people. We're going to pressure you to make a decision.
That is wild. So it's not like it's sitting on my grandma's computer in her living room, and when that computer dies, it dies. Like, this is purely decentralized.
Do you
100% decentralized? Yeah.
Do you think that the person went dark because their government would have crucified them for coming up with such a system?
I mean, we've seen other systems back in the day that tried to do e-money. Bitcoin's not the first e-money. It's just the one that solved some very important problems. One of those being, how do you decentralize trust effectively? And there's, a little bit theoretical, but there's a problem called the Byzantine generals problem, where it's when you have a bunch of generals around a castle, and if one general doesn't attack that castle, all the other generals die. So how do you ensure that every general is going to attack this castle? Well, that's what Bitcoin mining really solves, is we ensure that we have sunk costs in mining this Bitcoin. We're sinking energy, electrical, infrastructure costs into this problem, which then creates this trust-based network where one bad actor is disincentivized from screwing everyone else over, from not attacking the castle. So Bitcoin has been thought about, game theory. It's the most reviewed white paper on the internet. It's all public. You can look at it. And it's lasted for 11 years with 99.99999% uptime.
How does I'm just thinking? He said no bad actors. I immediately go to artificial intelligence. So as we push forward with artificial intelligence and quantum computing, how is that going to affect Bitcoin? Is that going to speed it up? Or speed it up in the sense that I can use AI to do it for me, or?
No, so what it would do is it's going to create a level or layer for AIs to do payments, because now payments are done via code. There's no need to add a person or intermediary in the middle. So AIs can now pay for things on your behalf. It's much faster to make decisions, to make those payments, to do settlement. When it comes to quantum computing, the Bitcoin network would adjust if a quantum computer started mining Bitcoin, and it would become significantly harder. Now, obviously, the person with the quantum computing is going to have an advantage over all the other players, but we hope that that's decentralized enough, and we can game theory that out only so far.
So give me, I need an example. You said AI could automatically pay. So will my AI just know that I owe Tanner $20 for beer and pizza and just say pay him? And it just knows where my account is?
Well, yeah, if someone built an AI that was focused on paying, friends and family around you, the AI could say, hey, I saw you were close to Tanner's cell phone and Corey, which one of them bought the dinner tonight? I want to make sure we follow up with them. And that interface is still being developed, but effectively these minute things we deal with on a day-to-day basis will be abstracted away from our life, and we'll be communicating with our phones like Siri should be. Like, hey, Siri, yeah, I just did leave dinner with Corey. Thanks again for asking. I owe him $70 for the dinner. And it pays him $70. You don't need Bitcoin to do that, but to settle it across the world and to do it without even human intervention, Bitcoin and blockchains and these payment rails can help.
That's pretty neat.
I was just going to say, I missed the Satoshi Nakamoto. I don't think he went dark. He probably just started Tesla and Starlink and SpaceX.
X mean Twitter?
That's good. Okay, so now let's circle.
There's a theory out there.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's circle all the way back. I hate that phrase, but I'm going to use it. Let's circle all the way back to the beginning and dive into the mining part. This is the Farm for Profit podcast. Now we've got some perspective. Our listeners are either way deep in the weeds or they understand more what we're talking about. Tell us more about your mining operations and why Iowa made sense for you to have several of these sites.
Sure. So we started in Iowa mainly because of the cheap energy. So the energy dynamic in Iowa is as follows. So you have your local cooperatives, which cover most of the state in order to provide power to rural area, and those are very important. Those were built out with USDA grants and help build the infrastructure out. Those local cooperatives, what we call member cooperatives, they're not supposed to make money. They're supposed to be able to provide benefits to the members and ensure that they can lower the electric rate for their members. That's an important step in understanding as we move forward in the discussion. The second part of these members, they kind of give all their rights to someone called a distribution cooperative. This is the group that owns the lines connecting the cooperatives together. And so, for example, in Grundy, we have the Grundy Center Cooperative. That gives its rights to Corn Belt, which is another cooperative. And then all the cooperatives over the past 60, 80 years have given all their rights to Basin Electric. Now, Basin Electric is Berkshire Hathaway baby, and they make a lot of money from the electricity markets here in Iowa and across the Midwest. So Berkshire Hathaway basically effectively sets the rate class for every single person down in what we call the wholesale markets in Iowa and in the electric markets. Then the cooperatives buy power from Basin and work with Basin to schedule load. Now, the market sitting on top of basin is actually where the power is traded and what we call the power of rules. So that's Southwest Power Pool, or SPP. You might have heard of that acronym, but that's where all the power is settled. That's who determines how the electric market is going to function and how we're going to play the game of buying electricity. So now let me bring it back to the local cooperative. What does this mean for them? We go to the local cooperative and we say, hey, we want to run our machines here 24/7. But right now, we're actually turned off because it's super hot in Iowa. So each one of our facilities is not running. That means our staff is working on other stuff. We're not making any Bitcoin. Why? Because the energy price is too high if we were to turn on our machines, and it would cost too much money. So we always have to we can't be running during something called the peak period or peak demand. When everyone else is using energy, for each cooperative every month, you set a peak. And so, for example, one of our sites in Osceola County, the peak right there is maybe 110 to 120 megawatts. We have a 5 megawatt facility there. So we can affect that peak pretty dramatically if we're running, which means that we have to pay a much higher rate for that energy in something called the demand charge on your bill, the electric demand charge, which is going to be charged if you're running during the peak for how many kilowatts or how many units of energy you're using at that peak time. So we're running our facilities 24/7, but when we get that alert, we turn off. In some cases, in some markets, not SPP yet, but in MISO, which is basically Des Moines and down, we get paid to turn off our power. So because we're buying the power every day, we're what they call a consistent or firm load. We know we're going to use the same energy if it's a Monday or if it's a Sunday. So for the energy operators, that's really good because they can ensure that they always have production to match that firm load. It's really hard to work on the flexible load, which is, someone turning on their washer and dryer or, their microwave. And at scale, that's hard to manage. So we're an easy load to manage. And so we're able to sell our power to the grid, and then someone else buys that power and we turn off and we get paid the difference. So if we're only willing to buy power up to $50 or $60, we get paid whatever that market cleared at. That market can be $300. It could be $3,000 like it is today in SPP per megawatt hour is the unit of measurement. And we're turning off our facilities. We're not making any Bitcoin, but we are making money back on the savings on the power effectively. I'll let you stop there and ask some more questions before we jump into the power game and how that trades and
That's
plays.
deep.
You said you're selling them the power back. Are you really selling them power back? You're not creating any energy. You're just stopping the flow.
We're selling the rights.
Okay.
Because we're buying the power every day. We own the rights to that energy effectively.
Yeah, so you basically contracted. It's like someone filling up their propane tank for a year's worth of supply.
And then they didn't use it.
And you could sell it to Dave to come fill his grilled pup tank at $300 a gallon when you paid $1 a gallon.
But you don't have like solar facilities that are on in cooperation with your server farms.
We do not have that, but there are facilities that do. That we've looked at building right on a wind farm when the wind's blowing, using the excess wind power. And this gets the problem. All the solar and wind and the Biden Infrastructure Act is that the energy prices that are low, they don't get to the consumer. And this is one of the big reasons why I'm in this space is because those savings aren't really being passed on effectively. What's happening is this power is being, most of it, is lost in transmission. No one really cares if it gets to the end consumer or if anyone's buying it. So sometimes in the middle of the night, we will get paid to mine Bitcoin and to use the energy because the subsidies for solar and wind, they have no fuel. Since there's no fuel cost, it's very little cost to maintain them. Therefore, they'd rather bid negative into the market so they can bid up to negative $25 an hour, which is enough to capture still some of their subsidies in order to capture those subsidies. And then we get paid $25 to use the energy plus the additional profit to mine the Bitcoin. And that happens when it's very windy or when it's, there's a lot of sun, really windy in Iowa, and when no one's using energy. So the middle of the night or the evenings.
So Iowa's the cheapest because we have the most wind and solar. Is that what you're saying?
You have a lot of wind and solar. You're not necessarily the cheapest. Like Texas out in the Midland, there's a lot of power there. Same problem happens. Basically, all this power gets congested and there's no buyer because we have to remember that, I would say the 70s and the 80s really changed the idea of the energy industry. We went from, okay, we're going to build energy so we can heat our homes to we're going to build energy so we can not pay taxes for tax credits for the green movement. And so we changed the incentive structure completely. So we have plenty of energy to use in society, especially in the United States. But that's the reason we don't need new power coming online. The problem is we don't have enough power when everyone needs it. But solar and wind, you can't just turn on. You have to wait for the grid. You have to wait for the wind to blow, the sun to shine. And so it's not timeable, which means that you still need that natural gas and that coal power, which is what we call base load power, in order to meet the demands when everyone wants to turn on their air conditioning. And so that's this massive problem we have in the industry across the board, is that we don't have enough people using energy. We have too many people building renewable energy sources that aren't consistent.
So even within Iowa, are you searching out the energy cooperatives that are heavy in solar and wind over coal and natural gas?
We're completely looking for the cheapest rate, but the rate's not set by the cooperative, it's set by the Basin Electric.
Okay.
So since Basin's basically taking all the buyers' energy and saying we're going to buy this in the market, they're buying that power at the node level, and there's different nodes where power trades at that market, that SPP market. So Basin's basically scheduling every day the load ahead of time, saying, hey, we're going to buy power because we know how much all of our members need for this day. And those costs, since those returns or those savings aren't necessarily passed through the consumer, because you don't have access to the open market in Iowa. In Texas, it's an open, unregulated market. Anyone can go to the market. They can buy from the market directly. There can be no middleman. But Iowa is one of those states that they don't have open market access.
Yeah. We got to buy it from the local cooperative because I know, if I was across the road, then they'll have utility districts, because across the road for me is Alliant, and it'd be way cheaper if I was with Alliant than Consumers Energy. Mm-hmm. And you made me think of something else, and it's making me spur a question. If I take us off the rails, bring us back.
I'll bring you back.
Here, I just put solar on my house. Okay, on our farm, and there's a thing called net metering. Mm-hmm. So there's peak times and there's non-peak times, right? Well, if I overproduce, because I can't control when it's sunny, okay, if I overproduce, that's great. It's only going to use whatever I use for the day. So what happens to all the extra? All the extra goes back to the grid. Okay, so
I would argue everything's going back to the grid no matter what.
Correct. It's going back to the grid. Okay, so it's all going there, and it's helping feed the grid. Now, my grid goes to the middleman that he's talking about, Consumers Energy, and it's not going to the whole deal. I don't get to set the rate of what they give me back. They set that rate. Now, here's a fun fact. If I was on Alliant Energy, they do a thing called net metering. So however much I use, it's worth just as much when I give it back.
Is it as much, or they just give you a better price? Because I think it's usually pretty cheap.
It's the same. It's
Okay.
dollar for dollar back is what my friend across the street who has it does. But mine, when I get it back, so I pay 16 cents per kilowatt hour. They only give me 2 cents per kilowatt hour back.
Right.
So here comes my question. I thought of doing a Tesla wall. So a Tesla wall, as batteries progress, then, hey, can I just bank this myself and then use it when my peak times are? Sure. So now I'm thinking on a very grand scale, JP, as batteries get better, what are the odds we have one factory that's nothing but batteries and then a whole nother factory that's nothing but Bitcoin mining machines? We create the power solar-wise, and then we just kind of have like a perfect triangle that we're storing it all for ourselves when we need it. We never have to shut down, and we basically create the power we need and use it, and now there's zero expense on any kind of energy usage.
So it makes sense on paper. But when you start to add the cost and the amortization of that kilowatt hour over the lifespan of the battery, it doesn't make sense. For us, we're looking to buy power for 3 cents to 4 cents, all in. That's our cost that we target, and we're able to with the load class we do. For someone like yourself paying 16 cents, you can amortize that battery, 4 times faster than we can.
Mm-hmm. And I just assumed that they're going to go to, and it didn't make sense for me to do it. I did not put batteries in because it didn't amortize. But as they get better and cheaper, which I assume they're going to,
right?
I mean, look at our DeWalt tools. And
I just know, like on our hog site, we looked at solar, and it just didn't make sense. Same thing, they didn't net meter. Yep. But in town, we get knocked on our door once a week from solar because they do net meter with our company, and they want you to go on there. I don't really like them on my roof, but a lot of people on my street have done it.
Right. What were you going to say, JP?
I was going to say it's also the amount of power we're using. So because we have a 5 megawatt facility, that's 5 megawatt hours per hour that we're running through. So in order to support a battery storage for 5 hours of downtime, we need 25 megawatts of battery storage for 5 megawatt facility for 5 hours. So those numbers start to become more expensive. But we have looked at running on a wind farm. So when the wind farm gets above, let's say 80 megawatts, the wind farm starts to sell to the grid, and we buy everything up to 80 megawatts immediately. So what that means is that those negative priced hours, the wind farm no longer has those. Instead, we flatten their cost curve or their revenue curve, and we're able to buy every hour at a set rate. And then when they're not running, we go to the grid and buy the remaining hours.
So you're taking the
true up our
byproduct,
power.
right?
Because the tax credit's the only reason why you do it anyway.
Right. To put it into agriculture terms, that these energy, like the windmill is creating a byproduct at a certain time, extra energy. Mm-hmm. You know, in ethanol we produce DDGs and natural gas and some other things. And so you're taking a product that's costing them money and at least making it zero or giving them value for it.
And I just looked at my solar. I've created 9 megawatts this year, and that is just with a simple solar system.
So you can barely power 2 hours
Right.
of one of JP's.
I mean, of course, they'd have to have a larger field than I have at my house, but yeah.
So, JP, as we talk about
Much larger field.
farm for profit and what our listeners are interested in, right? They want to know, how is this episode going to affect their farm or their business? Your company, you said, allows anybody to get into mining. So if we had a listener that wanted to set up a 5 megawatt hour site, what's that look like? How big? What's a structure? What does that look like?
So 5 megawatts is around $20 million of capital outlay. So it's possible. You basically go to the substation. We help locate those substation. We bring you one or that already we have in our portfolio. We get a conditional use permit or it's already zoned properly. And then we go ahead and put two slabs in for our what we call our mining pods, which you can imagine picked up by a forklift. You can drop them down. You connect 10 of them on one side. In the middle is something called a switchgear unit, which is a large electrical breakers, which are going to control that power. Then you have 10 more units on the other side. And we don't use air conditioning. We use passive cooling. So you have air coming in one side, just 90 degree, 100 degree air coming in one side, and that exhaust going out the other side through fans. It goes through the server. The server is cooled, and the air evaporates into the environment. And that is how we run these facilities. Then we have transformers which step the power down from the substation to a lower voltage, which you can plug a computer into. That goes to the switchgear. Then the switchgear goes to plug something called a PDU, power distribution unit, which is simple like your surge protector. And we plug in thousands of servers into those surge protectors effectively. And so for us to work through with a client, we're a general contractor on the project for someone, like a family office or large hedge fund or large company. And we then run the facility for them on a 5-year basis. For the smaller guy, let's say, $100,000 to $50,000, you're just going to focus on buying the machines. And those are called Bitcoin ASICs. ASIC stands for Application Specific Integrated Circuit, and they only can do Bitcoin mining. So these machines, you're gonna buy them from us. We're gonna help you get them from Malaysia, make sure we pay the customs on them, get them delivered, get them plugged in, and then give you your dashboard where you can see them running, every day and see how many of the machines are doing and what their speed is or how much math calculations and how fast they're calculating it. And so that process is fairly simple because you don't have to build out the site. You don't have to get the permits. We've already done that. It takes us about 3 months to build out a new facility from start to finish. About 2 months to permit everything. So if we're fast, we can do it in about 4 months. Usually it's 5 or 6 to get it done. And then we have 2,000 new spaces. We go ahead and sell those spaces to customers, and they put their servers in.
So what you got me thinking? How much space does this take? Because I know a couple of guys in Slater, Iowa, that just bought a building, and they have a certain amount of space. Okay, so how much could they buy? How big does the facility be for the juice to be worth the squeeze? Can we buy little like rental homes and just put X amount in it and have like mini substations?
So the constraint is not the space, but it's the energy. It's electrical. So the substations are maxed out around Iowa about 10 megawatts. So we go in there. There's already people on those subs. We're taking 5 megawatts of that. 5 megawatts is it's like close to, let's say, 5,000 to 7,000 homes of power.
Wow.
We're putting that on half an acre. So usually the infrastructure is not built out for an even industrial park. They're not the right fit because they're not using that much power. One of those green boxes outside when you drive around those transformers, If it says 2.5 megawatts on it, we use 2 of those for even a half an acre of land.
Wow.
We use all the juice from it.
But rightfully so, they wouldn't produce as much. So if they had a lower producing, I mean, they're not going to produce that many megawatts. So could a grid support? Let's say I was a farmer and I had 5 or 6 farms, and I wanted to put up a Morton building because I got a write-off on it, and so now I want to just throw in, a mini version of what you're doing, but maybe it wouldn't take near the grid to make that happen. Is that doable, or they just don't get the electricity at a cheap enough rate, and so then it's not worth it?
I want to jump in, JP, with an assumption that it probably comes down to the cost of the energy consumption. Corey's you said you're at 16 cents, and he's trying to buy it at 3 cents. Is that where this becomes maybe not profitable?
Exactly. So because Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin is a volatile asset, you want to have the lowest cost power. So I don't advise anyone build a facility above 5 cents energy. But if you have below 5 cents, then you can go in and you can buy like a little mini box, and you can put that down there and plug it into your house effectively, or bring up a service to that box, and you can plug it in and run 10 of these servers by yourself in your home or outside your house. You can run one server at your house.
So do you think there's ever a time, let me preface this for our listeners. I get a discount from 16 cents to 7 cents per kilowatt hour because I have geothermal. So because I'm greener and I'm trying to do something for the environment, I guess they lower the cost of it. And so I'm down to 7 cents per kilowatt hour. Let's pretend that I think City of Ames is 12 cents per kilowatt hour. Is there ever a time that you think that blockchain and Bitcoin might be to where they'll incentivize it and say, hey, we'll give you half off. I have 2 meters for that reason. This meter is just for geo. Could we have another meter that is just for blockchain? I wonder. I've never asked my cooperative that. We should ask them.
Yeah. If you ask consumers, they'll laugh at you. But anyway.
I know they will. I'm with the worst.
I think the question is it negotiable? You guys have negotiated it at a large scale, but is there a certain size at a farm that you can negotiate?
If 20 of us farmers got together,
it's all public. It's everything's regulated in Iowa, so it's all regulated rate. We're on a rate that any other person can come up and say, "Hey, I want this rate." There's requirements to that rate. You have to be using so many kilowatts. Usually, it's above like 300 or 500 kilowatts. So if you put up a 500 kilowatt system, then you can be on that rate, which is only 4.3 cents or 4.5 cents. We don't get any special treatment as a Bitcoin miner. We just understand the industry more than others, and it's my livelihood. So that's where the expertise comes. And because we know how to play by the rules, we're able to play by the rules.
I got a good one when you're ready.
Well, Corey sparked a thought of mine as to how it's incentivized, and using the terminology byproduct. We've got producer listeners that have started utilizing like anaerobic digesters to collect the methane gas off of manure to generate energy that might in turn be able to generate the power necessary to run Bitcoin miners, therefore creating an entire loop of their own that could potentially make this financially feasible.
And that's one of the best ways to mine Bitcoin, because your only cost, or one of your costs, is your amortization of that generator. That's the most expensive, or your turbine. It's the most expensive thing in that equation. But yeah, there's a lot of people in the mining space that we tap wells. We tap the natural gas from these well sites in North Dakota and Texas, and even the WEF and the big guys, the UN. They're saying Bitcoin mining is a solution to natural gas flaring in oil sites. It's one of the only solutions out there, because of its high energy density and the fact that it can take this byproduct of waste. So natural gas Bitcoin mining is a huge thing. Mining at landfills, mining at waste treatment plants. There's tax incentives for those too. So there's a whole nother opportunity where not only you can help save the environment, but you're also now able to mine Bitcoin at a discount.
I got one quick before that. So at one point you said you are turning off these miners and turning them back on when the power is cheaper. Is that size the same? Like you have to be, what'd you say? I can't remember the kilowatt. 5 kilowatt. You have to be a certain size. Like you can't do that down at the farm level, right?
I don't know why you couldn't.
At any level. In most of your contracts, you have a firm demand. It's just the problem is you don't know when that's going to be. You have to kind of guess, and no one really wants to be warm in their house when it's 140 degrees outside.
Well, you guys, is that part of miningstore.com? You're helping guys set up miners or a site. Can you guys also help with that algorithm? It's got to be some program or something that reads that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you could go to your electric provider and say, hey, I want to be notified when the peak demand is.
Yeah.
And as a member, you have the right to, to get some of that information from your cooperative. We don't have the bandwidth per se to help out everyone when it comes to planning their smaller sites, but we will help you with buying the machines, configuring them, especially if you're local in Iowa. It's easier for us to support because we have a lot of staff there.
So, guys, think about the future. Okay, think about this. Then think about, let's pretend everybody has electric cars just for a second. Not saying it's good or bad. If we do, think of how much more demand it's going to take just for those electric cars. Are we going to have to up our entire grid system? And now instead of every little green box being 5 megawatts or 2.5, now they're, even more. So that's one thought I had. The other thing is, so we don't have enough demand, Corey, but what if you and your new Souk-Up grain dryer weren't operated off of propane, and they were operated off electricity? Well, you'd have a guaranteed, consistent flow, just like JP here, of how much electricity you're using. It might cost you more, but if you could then get a cheaper rate to get Bitcoin, could that be an advantage? Because now you're in the same ballpark. So this is why they give me an advantage for having Geo, because it's electric backup. They know I'm going to use electricity instead of propane. Could farmers do that with grain dryers? I don't know anybody that has an electric grain dryer.
I don't think you can get enough energy from electric to make it worth it to dry grain. But I am thinking natural gas.
Well,
go ahead.
On the grain dryer conversation, because we've looked at this as well, grain dryers, you have a high peak and you're running with everyone else. And so if you can flatten that peak and you can flatten your demand, you can actually lower that cost per kilowatt hour. So putting up a Bitcoin mine with a grain dryer is going to help you manage your load a little bit better and ensure that your bill could be in a different regulated tier compared to everyone else who has a grain dryer because your load's more stable. So that's the advantage to grain dryers or farmers that have grain dryers in mining Bitcoin.
So that's a whole nother perspective. Yeah. I'm imagining we've had a couple of guests on that here that are rather large dairies. And that's where the methane capture really comes into play as far as right now what makes the most sense. But they've got large electric capacity as well, probably dependent upon the scale of the farm, just like you said, partnering with a crew like yours to put a Bitcoin mine in, if the load capacity is available, to cheapen the rate for the other operation. The Bitcoin almost becomes the byproduct.
Yeah. But I got to imagine this to scale what JP's doing.
Well, he said $20 million.
I was going to say, it sounds very expensive. You're going to have to be one of the largest operators out there to make this jive to where you're profitable.
But JP has investors, right, that are interested in the Bitcoin side of it. Not even necessarily.
We'll take a look at this site. We're always looking for facilities and land that has access to these. Anyone who's in Iowa, we understand the network, and we know cooperatives we can work with, that we have contracts with, that work well, and we also know cooperatives that are in the same load base to be able to make it work.
Corey,
so there's a very high likelihood that anyone in Iowa could work with us.
I don't know anybody who is farmer / Bitcoin miner as a side gig. We did the podcast on side gigs to make extra revenue. This is interesting that a farmer could do that, but if he had investors that have hundreds of thousands to buy all the machines, what's that look like on your facility?
I mean, I imagine as you get larger with anything, it gets easier to make money, but capital's hard to come to. So let's say you had a $50,000 or $100,000 facility on your farm. Say you had under 5 cents per kilowatt hour, so you were at 4 cents, where he said, you need to be. Obviously, we have a fluctuation of Bitcoin price as well as another factor, but let's say it's at today's price. What kind of return am I going to look at on a $100,000 facility?
So it's a great question. There's a lot of things that play into that. Difficulty, right? How many Bitcoin are you going to be mining? What's the increase? I'll say that some of the customers we've worked with, they put up some capital, and it was 2020 of August, and we just kind of reviewed their contract, and they ended up returning 300% on their investment of over $400,000. So
In 1 year?
there's that type of level of return that can be captured over since 2020.
Since
so in
2020.
3 years.
Yep.
So it's pretty significant IRR. When we look at these sites, that's just cash basis. So that's selling your Bitcoin every day you mine it, not holding it for the future. So when we look at profitability of Bitcoin mining, it goes in those cycles. So we see that there's a really good time to mine, which is about a 9-month period, when what the problem in the industry faces is the Bitcoin price moves up faster, then we can put new infrastructure in the ground. And so the value of every Bitcoin we collect, because the network isn't growing faster, difficulty isn't getting harder, is worth more to our bottom line. That happens about in a 9-month period over that 4-year section. Then you have about 18 months where it's just down. Every day you're running, you're making less money because more people are plugging in, the Bitcoin price is going down, and you're going to get squeezed. And at some point, the market has to find an equilibrium because Bitcoin is a worldwide thing and everyone has the same input cost, which is energy. Some people have to eventually turn off because they're unprofitable. So those are people that are going to start at the 10 cents, the 12 cents, the 8 cents, the 7 cents, and it keeps going down until the market hits a rebound point where either the price of Bitcoin goes back up or enough people have turned off where instead of getting harder, it becomes easier. So Bitcoin mining, it's best to look at a 4-year scale, and it's a lot about timing of when you're getting in the industry because you don't want to buy equipment that's too expensive relative to its year average price. You can really get screwed that way because when you're looking at a Bitcoin miner, you're valuing it on the discounted cash flow that unit's going to produce over the course of its lifespan over 24 months. And so if Bitcoin's going up really fast and you buy a Bitcoin miner thinking, hey, I'm going to make the same return every day for the next 24 months, well, that's just, it's not going to happen. So it's important to consider those things.
Could you sabotage other Bitcoin miners? Like if you basically
turn the power off?
No, it's a race to the bottom.
Trojan horse.
Oh. They're going to turn it off. We know that they're not going to produce. Okay, so if I could use all the energy that he needed, and then he doesn't turn his facility on, what happens to his investors? They don't make money. When they don't make money, what do they want out? They want out, right? So could I sabotage large Bitcoin miners by basically using their energy?
Yes and no. It's just at so much scale, the energy that we're using is to the level of Google and Microsoft and Facebook, and they're the next comparable consumer. What happens is the servers, there's newer servers that come out every other year. Those servers are more efficient, so that calculation of energy to amount of Bitcoin mined is becoming more Bitcoin for less energy. And then the servers end up going to places that are cheaper for energy, like Venezuela, South America, Paraguay, where their energy is basically 1 cent, or it's coming off of hydro dams, or, for example, the methane gas guys, their cost of energy is very, very low. So the servers, as they get older, end up showing it up at those places where the energy is very cheap. And then also you have companies that are public with large balance sheets that are coming into this space. You have sovereign wealth funds that mine Bitcoin, like Abu Dhabi and El Salvador, the countries, mines Bitcoin. So you have players that can run even at a negative cost or a negative EBITDA for a long, long time. That's why, as a small Bitcoin miner, there's still money to be made. It's still a massive industry, doing billions of dollars a year, over $20 billion in revenue for the whole industry last year. And you can still take a small piece out of that. But the nice thing about it, even why the little guy can win, is because Bitcoin, it doesn't care if you're a nation state. It doesn't care if you're a company. It doesn't care if you're an individual. It's a level playing field in the sense where we all have the same input cost. We all have to use energy to create this new Bitcoin, which is why it's money for the people, which is why it's freedom money, which is why I believe it's the best store of value in the world, and is one of the most, has been an asset that's appreciated rapidly since 2011, and only will continue to do that because it can't be debased and it can't be created more of it. And you can't just skip the system out and say, oh, we don't want to use energy to make it. We're going to make it out of thin air. So with those things in mind, Bitcoin is one of the best places, not financial advice, but to store wealth in.
So guys, just
man.
There's no way we're going to wrap this show up.
No, there's not.
So many
we're not wrapping it up yet.
We're not wrapping it up. I just make a quick comment. So this reminds me of the store and ignore philosophy. If you don't have to mine and sell in order to generate cash flow, judging based upon how more difficult it's going to get to mine Bitcoin, these sovereign nations or whichever that you just described Do you think their philosophy is to mine it and hold it until it appreciates?
Yeah, El Salvador is a great example. They had the highest performing bond this year, the country of El Salvador. Why? Because they backed their balance sheet with Bitcoin.
See, my question is, how do you get the value out of it? We know Bitcoin is at 26, according to Coinbase, at 26,500 roughly today. But we have seen it down to 4,000, up to 50,000. Tanner, as a bank, would call it speculation, right? As holding Bitcoin. It's a speculative.
I can't use it as collateral because of how rapidly the value changes.
You need to pay the power company. You need to pay the guys that pour the concrete, your employees that are there, and get cash. When I sell a bushel of corn to the co-op, they don't hold it and hope that it goes from $5 to $6. Mm-hmm. They immediately have their profit baked in, and they turn around and sell it to the Chicago Board of Trade. Are you guys personally, as a company, buying and holding, or are you turning it immediately into cash somehow, or what are you doing there?
Sure. So I'll mention the market for Bitcoin is very liquid. It trades 24/7, 7 days out of the week. There's no holidays. There's no banking holidays. There's nothing. You can trade on any exchange in the world. There's thousands of them out there. And when it comes to us, we mine Bitcoin at the end of every month. We sell a portion of it to pay our power bills and expenses. But we also can take a longer position on Bitcoin, and we can collateralize it and take loans against it without the need for any bank, because the blockchain technology allows us to do that. So it creates decentralized pools of capital where we can add Bitcoin as our collateral, and we can lend against that Bitcoin, and it'll automatically be liquidated if it goes below the value of that Bitcoin.
You guys
so we don't have to sell it. We can just lend against it.
You guys segued right into my question, and it was, should we mine or should we buy? Should we buy and hold as an investment, or should we mine as an investment and sell it? Was that exactly pretty much what you
mine and hold?
Yeah, or mine and hold. We're on the same field there exactly.
So the answer comes down to how much does depreciation matter to you as a tax advantage? If you're just buying Bitcoin, you can't depreciate it. If you want to have a massive loss on your equipment, you want to be able to depreciate this asset, you want to buy Bitcoin miners, because then you can depreciate that and save money on taxes there. But it also comes down to your energy bill, as we talked about. 5-6 cents energy, you don't want to go much higher than that. And if you kind of have that formula, Bitcoin mining is a great way to dump, like I said, $20 million in 1 acre.
So now I'm trying to think. Let's say you're an individual makes $500,000 a year. Or a farm that makes $500,000 a year. Oftentimes, Tanner will use 179 deductions to buy equipment. We'll buy a $200,000, $300,000 combine to make it look like we made less money. Now we can one-time depreciate that in a year to make it look like we don't have to pay in $100,000 in taxes. Everything has a depreciation schedule. Buildings do, equipment does. I'm guessing the equipment is a lower depreciation schedule, like 7 years, or is it? Can you take it all at once? Can we go drop and
3 to 4 years for depreciation schedule, and you'll need to talk to a tax guy. But there's the ability, if you're structured right, to take a majority of it in the first year.
We just gotta make it look like a tractor.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. That's why I said if we build a shop. So sometimes, buildings are long-term depreciation, but
is there options? I think there is. Like in other commodities, you can buy puts, calls, and you can leverage and all that stuff.
Yep, that's all regulated on the CME. You can open up your CME account and buy Bitcoin futures. You can buy puts, calls, all that. You can buy public company options for mining companies and get exposure there. MicroStrategy is a public company. They just buy Bitcoin. That's all they do. They issue bonds. They buy Bitcoin. They're one of the biggest Bitcoin holders. And the nice thing about the public markets is that when a Bitcoin goes up 10%, a public company with exposure to Bitcoin might go up 15%, just because of the nature of the leverage on that underlying asset. So those will be more volatile, but also give you higher returns.
This is where I thought AI could come into play. You know how our friend Go Farm Yourself is using AI to find the best time to buy and sell grain. Could AI give you the best time to buy and sell Bitcoin?
Possibly. I mean, mitigating risk in any commodity is a very huge deal. And you look at, say, corn or beans, and it goes up 20 or 30 cents, and it's like, this is, it's not that big of a deal. But then you look at it at a whole farm level.
Yeah.
and you look at your balance sheet and it's like, oh shit, I lost $24,000
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And you start thinking Bitcoin goes down $100, so like I imagine that's another business entity or mitigation of risk that needs to happen if you're going to do this.
And it's built out in this space. You can even you can hedge the difficulty. So up to 6 months, what I was talking about, that difficulty and all the other miners getting on, you can hedge that exposure as well. So you can hedge your Bitcoin price exposure, you can hedge your energy exposure with natural gas hedges, and you can hedge your difficulty exposure of other people getting on the Bitcoin mining space.
So we went a lot into the mining side of it today, which has been very interesting. Obviously, we have not had a shortage of questions. I do think we could do a whole nother episode some other time on how blockchain could basically impact agriculture.
And we talked a couple.
We did
like
a little bit.
From legal
But
title.
I think you could get so much more into origin labeling, country of origin labeling
Yes.
for beef. I mean, we could get so much deeper into how blockchain could affect ag, but I also want to be respectful of JP's time. So
I'm able to keep going if you guys have more questions on anything, but
what would be something that you would want to share with our audience during this conversation that we've missed? What else would be important for them to know?
inflation is criminal.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin's protection against that. But seriously, blockchains, like, yes, you can track other things, but it's hard. It's hard to do that because you now have a physical thing, and physical things degrade. So blockchains have only so many uses. They do much better when it comes to decentralizing trust in the financial markets, auctions, predictions, hedging, those type of instruments, contracts. But when it comes to tracking coffee across a supply chain, it becomes just blockchains they're just like glorified databases at that point.
Right.
So I mean, we've seen IBM try it, we've seen Walmart try it, and there's some great reasons why it's very hard and doesn't really work out well, even though it's a great buzzword and everyone loves talking.
Corey, is there any agriculture companies now that use Bitcoin to pay? Can you think of any?
I think I don't think like solely, but I think they have options too.
Because I'm thinking, doesn't Amazon allow you to pay with Bitcoin?
I don't know about that.
Amazon does not. There's other places that allow you to play with Bitcoin, like I think Microsoft you actually can pay, DirecTV, those type of people, but Amazon's not one of them.
So as you are in your everyday life, obviously you are in the Bitcoin world, you're in cryptocurrency. Do you try to pay with it as often as possible?
No, we play with stable coins, when we're paying vendors because it's $1 to $1. But when we're transferring value, sometimes we'll pay people in our industry Bitcoin. But I've paid for laptops in Bitcoin. 20 Bitcoin laptop. No one wants to be like, yeah, I could have saved that and bought a mansion. So it's more about holding your value in it, not necessarily transacting it on a day-to-day basis to buy your coffee. It's very possible. Yeah. When we were with Bitcoiners, people pay in Bitcoin, but I don't see us ditching, the credit card, the Apple Pay system we have. It's just too convenient.
Yep.
Bitcoin's value comes from protecting, your wealth and storing it in an asset that
never
is
thought
going
of
to
that.
be the same 100 years from now.
So-
less of paying for coffee.
Tanner, we print money as federal government every year, right?
Every day.
Every day. Mm-hmm. There's only 21 million of these. What happens when we hit that point? Do they just now become worth so much more when we hit 100 years from now? Or what's that look like, JP?
I mean, so now we're playing the game theory, which is what I really want in the end of my life. Do I want dollars that can be inflated away, or do I want Bitcoin that I'll know never will be inflated and I can always lend against it to live my life? So I'm in the camp of I don't want to sell my Bitcoin. I would rather just put it in a cold wallet, lend against it to live my life, and know that Bitcoin is going to appreciate faster than I can spend off of lending against it. And that's how I'm approaching, my future as a 26-year-old moving forward, because I understand that, inflation, like I said, it's one of these evils that just steals from the working class. And if you go ask my grandpa, hey, grandpa, how much did it cost to go to the movie? Oh, it was a nickel. Well, it's not that people were starting making more money and that a movie started becoming more expensive. No, it's the fact that, our dollar erodes from us just out of thin air. We can't do anything to protect ourselves. And so what would you do? You'd buy land, you buy assets. well, this is an asset that I can put in my pocket. I can walk across anywhere in the globe. I can carry $10 million without anyone knowing, and I don't need to worry about the implications of protecting that asset with a gun. I don't need to worry about the implications of a sovereign nation saying I have it and knowing that I have it on me. And that has huge implications for freedom, for society as a whole, and especially in countries that don't have the asset and property rights that we have in America. When a regime comes in and says, this is my house now. So I think that's the power that Bitcoin's going to give to people across the world and already has. And we're going to see that unlocked even more and more as we move into the future.
Have you guys thought of it as a wealth storage device? I haven't.
No, because I'm going to forget my password.
That's what I thought.
I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say yes, because in the beginning it was like, well, I'm going to buy this and it's going to $250,000.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what everyone said, or 50,000, whatever.
But I never thought about the appreciation of that versus borrowing against it. They always say smart people use the bank's money, not use the bank's money to leverage. And as long as I'm making more than I owe the bank, I'm still making money. Yep. And I didn't use any of my own. Well, that's similar to what.
Yep. Tanner wants to wrap this up, but I got one more. I always do. There's other mined coins. Then there's some coins that aren't mined. Why?
So mined coins are created from the mining process we've talked about. The reason why you can choose to do mined or non-mined is all about consensus, as we talked about in the beginning with the Byzantine general problem. So you can also get consensus through nodes. And so nodes are just people running software on their computers, and that's the same way they validate transactions on the blockchain. It's just a different way to gather consensus. I personally believe that in order for a asset that's digital to have value, it needs to have a real cost and input cost to it. You can't just start up a computer program and copy that file 1,000 times. That's not very costly to create. And so by Bitcoin, you having to use energy to create it, it levels the playing field, but also makes it costly for the new Bitcoins that are created and for all Bitcoins out there, because they all came with a little bit of energy used to get them.
So is there any other coins that you were looking at mining, or are you mining any others right now?
We have customers that mine like some things like Dash, Monero, and other privacy coins, but they don't have the same fundamentals as Bitcoin, and I can't speak to them, in their long-term nature and their true value hold that Bitcoin has.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
I just know it can get a little murky when you start going and it's like, holy cow, there is hundreds of coins, and then.
So I had a guy call the other day, and he wants me to auction off his actual Bitcoin. And I said, sir, it's a digital currency. It's not an actual thing. He says, no, I have the actual Bitcoin. And apparently they made like actual ones that look like Bitcoin that were coins, and they're worth something, but I don't know that they're worth anything.
Yeah, they're called Caucasian Bitcoins or something like that. They came out, there's a group that came out in like 2013. They were a little popular, but you're right. The Bitcoin is, what a Bitcoin wallet looks like. It's like an email address and a password. And it's just that's how you unlock your Bitcoin wallet if you know both of those information. In regards to losing your Bitcoin, you can give it to you can give half the keys to your grandma and half the keys to your mom and half the keys to your bank. And so that in order, if you have something happen to you, all three of those people can come together and unlock your wallet. So you can actually spread these keys around so that you can still get that consensus to use your money. So in the event of a death, or if you can't spend your coins, you forget your password, there is ways to protect your wealth that are self-custody ways. And there's also ways to store Bitcoin on apps like Coinbase, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, and you can trust a third party to store your Bitcoins for you.
Interesting. But yes, I am wrapping this up. We will talk again, JP. We will get you back on here in a little while to explore this a little bit deeper. But we ask one question to all of our guests at the end of the show, just kind of a unique way to create a summary show about once a quarter. The question that you get is, what do you enjoy most about farming, or what do you like most about farmers?
I love the friendly nature of farmers, especially the ones I've met in Iowa. When they bring me in for dinner, they ask me questions about Bitcoin. They tell me about their life, and they get me to allow me to sit up in the tractor and just chat with them about Bitcoin as they're spraying their fields or collecting the corn and just seeing the community out there. It's been a pleasure, being able to be out in Iowa. I don't live there, but being out there a few times a year and meeting the community and educating them on the benefits of electricity and Bitcoin mining.
Well, we thank you for educating us and our audience today. Corey, do you have a challenge? I don't know if I could do it justice by trying to summarize this.
No,
I mean,
you're good.
You basically have done a great job, and if someone needs a summary, they just need to listen to the episode twice.
Yeah, I'll probably listen to it twice. I don't really have a challenge besides go to miningstore.com. And Dave, do you have anything? I mean, maybe along the lines of like open your mind, like the world's coming faster than you think here because this is crazy technology that not a lot of people have thought about. So just look into it.
Yeah.
How about it? Do you ever give tours of your facilities?
Yep.
I would love to do that sometime.
If anyone wants a tour, yeah, feel free to reach out to us on the website, and we can set up a tour for you. We'll take your ID and log in our system, and then give you a tour. And we have great technicians. Some of them are local Iowans that have been able to get jobs in the IT space in the middle of Iowa, and we're really proud of being able to offer them those.
We need a tour to throw on our YouTube channel.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, they're happy to show you guys. We got a facility close to Marshalltown.
Here's my challenge.
Work out well.
Okay.
Here's my challenge is JP said he went to school and was going for computer science, and somebody advised or he thought, screw it, I'm just going to chase my dreams. That's your challenge. Chase your dreams.
Chase your dreams.
Yep.
I love it. JP, this has been a pleasure. Go to miningstore.com. Listeners, we appreciate you tuning in with us. But until next time, have a good one.